Pulling up to Mickey D's just for drinks? Oh yeah, that's me. Nothing extra, just perfection and a straw. Coming in hot for the coldest cups on the block. Because there are drinks. Then there are drinks from McDonald's.
Ever combine an ice-cold frozen Coke with piping hot fries? Try frozen drinks any size for $1.49. Prices and participation may vary. Cannot be combined with any other offer.
Ba-da-ba-ba-ba.
Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Streamed and Screened, an entertainment podcast about movies and TV from Lee Enterprises. I'm Terry Lipschutz, managing editor of the National Newsroom at Lee, co-host of the program of Bruce Miller, editor of the Sioux City Journal, and a longtime entertainment reporter. And Bruce, I just realized I'm sounding way too excited, way too happy, because this is kind of a somber episode.
This is our
Everything.
canceled episode.
We're not canceled. We're still going on.
Okay, good. That's good then. Then we can be... we bit the bullet. We're good. But TV shows, remember how it was always a big deal where you go, it's going to be the last episode. And then MASH is the classic example of that, where it built up and it was a movie, was the last episode. When they knew in advance, they could really plan for that final episode. Very few today really get that lead up. This week, Young Sheldon gets that. But they knew that going into the season. It was just they had to speed up things a little bit because the strike cut back the number of episodes they were ordering. So they condensed a few things and then kind of tee it up for their next spinoff. But I must say that of these kind of wrap 'em up shows, that was one of the most moving I've seen. They deal with the funeral of the dad, and that was something we knew way back in the Big Bang Theory. The dad was going to die sometime now. And they announced it at the previous week that this, dad's dead. And it just does sound a little depressing, doesn't it? But they have the funeral episode, and then they tee it up with bringing back the old Sheldon and his wife. And they reflect back on what this time was. So I think they do a nice job of pulling it all together. And you learn new things about Sheldon and his family. You know that you find out that they have children. You find out the names of the children. You find out what they're interested in. And of course, Sheldon is writing a memoir that he thinks is going to be a Pulitzer Prize winner. So, all those things are kind of cool because it ties in. What it doesn't do is give you some kind of clear idea what happens to some of the characters. Of course, one's dead, but what about the other ones? Like, is Meemaw going to be around somewhere? Is the mom going to be somewhere? How about, will Sheldon show, or the sister? Will they all turn up somewhere in this new spinoff? So that's kind of still there are questions to be answered. But I think they could have even done a whole other series about the lives of the people who were left behind, or Sheldon at school as a young kid. I don't know that we really got that story in detail as much as we could have. So there's more to be done there. Bob Hart's Abishola, which ended last week, within this last month, they wanted to keep going. They had no intention of just shutting it off because they thought there was more story to be told. And so they didn't wrap it up with some big episode that would make you feel, okay, and then Bob dies. Okay, that's how we get out of this. If you look back at some of the ones, they really did make sure that things would not come apart in future years. You couldn't do things. 6 Feet Under was a real good wrap 'em up episode where they flash forwarded so you got to see what happened to all those characters that you loved. And so then there was nobody could say, well, I just suppose they're still doing this. You knew what was happening to that bunch. St. Elsewhere had that one with the snow globe that everybody complained about for years. This was all just the thoughts of a young boy. This is like, no, we don't want this. Mary Tyler Moore, where they, left the station and she shut out the lights. Yeah. Bob Newhart, where he woke up in bed with the first show's wife and thought it was all a dream. So there are ways of ending these series, but who knows how many get a chance to do that.
Yeah, you bring up MASH, which of course was the classic example, but there have been plenty of other shows which they certainly built it up. Like you knew, when Cheers was going to wrap, that somehow, and it was kind of a weird final, I thought it was a decent series finale where, Sam just kind of turned the lights off on the bar. It didn't mean it was closing or going out of business or anything, but it was just closing the door on that era. But of course, you had Seinfeld, which had that just really bizarre ending. But then, of course, Curb Your Enthusiasm, we knew it was going out, and they doubled down on that ending and said we have no regrets, right? And we talked about that a few weeks ago. But you look also kind of in this era of streaming and in some cases big budgets. There's some shows which you keep wondering, like, well, wait, whatever happened? We did a season 2, but where's season 3? And you think about how long it took for Deadwood, which was such a great show on HBO. Everybody loved it. The ratings were pretty good, but it was very expensive to produce. And they kind of had some, some issues with would they do another season or not, and they wanted to wrap it up, but they didn't, and then something happened, and yada yada yada, and then all of a sudden, it took like a decade, and then they did kind of that 2-hour movie to bring things together.
Look at Yellowstone now. I mean, they say the end is near, but how are they going to play off those final episodes? And what will they be used for? Will they be split? Will they be, launching some other show into this? And all those kind of spinoffs, I don't know whatever happened to those. Is 1923 coming back?
Right. And then you look at Netflix, and they have this tendency to just kind of act shows you look at it and be like, why are you getting rid of this? And there's one in particular. Did you watch Mindhunter on Netflix at all? The one?
No.
So that one was, it was following kind of like the FBI and crime investigators, and they were looking into serial killers. And first season was really good. Second season, really good. And I'm looking at Rotten Tomatoes, 97% critic score, 95% audience score. And they just canceled it out of the blue. It's done. It's never coming back. And there's, if you go on to, I've seen discussions of it on like different online forums, on Reddit, and people would say the same thing. Like, why did this show get canceled? There was no reason. But if Netflix isn't sharing its audience data, maybe there was something in the data, or maybe it was too expensive, or who knows what. But it was a really good show, and I loved it.
Yeah, there should be an explanation. Look at True Detective, where it had a great first season, then it went punk, and then I was like, oh, where is this going? Disappears, comes back this year. Will it come back again? And who's going to be? You don't know.
Yeah, those anthology series, you can kind of just chalk it up to an anthology. Like, we're kind of done. Oh, no, we have a new idea. Oh, we're done. We got to. But when you're doing a series like Mindhunter, which was kind of, season after season, the idea was they kind of build on each other. And it just went. And there was for no good reason.
Pulling up to Mickey D's just for drinks? Oh yeah, that's me. Nothing extra, just perfection and a straw. Coming in hot for the coldest cups on the block. Because there are drinks. Then there are drinks from McDonald's.
Ever combine an ice-cold frozen Coke with piping hot fries? Try frozen drinks any size for $1.49. Prices and participation may vary. Cannot be combined with any other offer.
Ba-da-ba-ba-ba.
You look at Blue Bloods. Now let's go into grandparents who sit there on Friday nights waiting for Blue Bloods to come on. Constantly. They're constantly, when is Blue Bloods? I love Blue Bloods. It's my favorite. Blue Bloods people still want to keep going. And I would think they could still bring that same audience, but different kind of regimes get into power, and they don't want to have these old shows kind of sitting around littering the landscape when they think they could put on something that's either cheaper or something that's going to kind of define their era. So they become a victim almost of somebody else's idea. And that's too bad. And I still don't think it's dead, even though people say, oh yeah, Blue Bloods is dead. I think it'll emerge somewhere because it's too easy to do. Grownish, remember Blackish, and then it created Grownish, and Grownish is going to go. Well, did it outlive its usefulness? It's no longer necessary anymore because the characters have gotten too old for college, and we don't need to see that life? I don't know. And then you find that some of the actors move on to other things and they don't want to be held back. What We Do in the Shadows is one of my favorite comedies, and I think it has one more year left. And the people that are on that show are getting big offers. They're not just sitting around waiting, what's the next season of this? And they don't do that many episodes. So you think they could squeeze it in somewhere. You know, when you're doing 8 to 10 episodes, that's not that much. You could do, in London, they do 3 series in a year. They call them series, even though they're like 5 episodes and out.
Yeah.
And Downton Abbey now is into making movies. They've got a 3rd movie announced. That's where the big bucks are. And so moving on and going to do a film is probably what they all want to do with this. If we're going to play the same character, we're getting movie money.
Yeah. I sometimes wonder if studios use that as an excuse, like the contracts as an excuse where to quietly pull the plug, because that was something that came up with in the background with Mindhunter. I remember it coming up with Deadwood, where after that season ended, the final season ended, it took a little while to kind of make a final decision as to what would happen. And at that point, the contracts were up with the actors. They all found something else to do. And then they just conveniently say, well, we'd like to do another season, but so-and-so is over here and this person's over there. We just can't do it anymore. And it almost feels like an excuse.
Look at Friends. If one of them had bailed and then they tried to introduce a new friend, that never would have worked. So for them, when they did that whole big pitch at one point that we're all equal, we all get paid the same, that was probably the smartest move they ever made. And I think it lasted longer than it might have if they were paying certain people more money than others. Now you can't escape Friends. It's everywhere. Now, I wonder how they do with It's Always Sunny. Because, how many years has that thing had?
It's been around.
They must pay to work on that show. Because I would think after this many years, they would say, I think we can rerun a lot and we're good.
But that's one of those quirky comedies, too, that just kind of keeps on rolling.
And it didn't need the kind of audience that a network show would need. Where a network show, if you don't perform right away, you're going to be out.
Well, look at, and we were talking about this when we were trying to think of some of these shows. Cobra Kai, right? That show, it just was a weird, nostalgia trip that, what was it? The first 2 seasons debuted on YouTube. I mean, it wasn't even on a network. It wasn't even on Netflix. I mean, it's on Netflix now because Netflix bought it. But the first couple seasons, it was just this weird nostalgia trip, bringing back the characters, seeing what would happen. And then it kind of evolved into this big, I wouldn't call it a big series, but it got to the point where, we're finally up to the 6th and final season. And I was even thinking about it today, where is this final season? I know it got hung up by the writer's strike and everything, but it is due out soon. We're going to get 15 episodes instead of the usual 10-ish. They're going to split it into 3 5-episode chunks. So we're going to get 5 in July and then 5 later in the year. And then 5 more. I know, I hate it. And then I guess 5 more in early 2025, leading into the new Karate Kid movie, which, so it's kind of leading into that to some degree. But, there's another show, which I love it. It's just such a dumb show. But growing up on Karate Kid, I want to keep watching it, but it's also one of those that's begging to end at the same time, where every season has gotten more and more over the top and ridiculous, where it's just okay, can we be done with it now?
Yeah. What haven't we done? Right. And then if you start repeating what you did, but just with different characters, I don't know that that's helping anything, but I think some of those shows could last a little longer. Now, when you consider I Love Lucy had 33 episodes in a season, one season. And then they went maybe 4 or 5 years, something like that. Well, add that up. That's more than some of these other ones in a lifetime that have been on forever. I don't know. It's content. It's all about content and how long can the content hang around.
It is fascinating when you think about it, how all those early TV series, you're right, 35, 40 episodes in a season. It's they just took a couple weeks off in the summer and that was it. And then in the 80s, when you got into the sitcom era, it was like 23 to 25 episodes was the season. It was basically, we did September through, like late November, early December, took the holidays off, and then came back and then went through May. And now you're lucky to get a dozen episodes.
Right. And they want to try to billboard the second half of the season as the new season, or we have a new story for you. And, it's like, just don't do this to us. Just give us more content. That's all we need. But yeah, I think the limited series is what we're going to see more of. We'll see more short term, and they end the story.
Yeah.
And we go, okay. And then maybe the characters can come back doing another one. The Night Manager was one that was very compact. It was a great limited series, and they're bringing it back. It's just another issue or another crime or a situation that they deal with, but it's still fascinating. It's just, I think when you have to do it all the time, it becomes a real drain. Yeah, it's odd. Okay, here's one that, where do they go from here? Schmigadoon. It was a musical series on Apple that kind of spoofed old Broadway musicals over different eras. And they got 2 seasons done, and they were all looking forward to a third. And then it was like, no, we pulled the plug, but they're going to turn it into a Broadway musical. So you're going to see Schmigadoon, the musical, on Broadway. Same with Smash. Smash didn't do that well. It lasted a couple of years. And then now that's going to be a big Broadway musical. So they find ways of keeping their concept alive, but it doesn't necessarily have the same people.
Yeah.
And I think maybe it's just expensive people.
It is.
They want too much. Look at us. We want nothing.
Right. I will say, I do enjoy shows like Fargo, like True Detective, where it is the anthologies, and they can reboot it with a new cast and a new storyline. So you do get multiple seasons, but you also aren't left kind of wondering what happened. And that's always the problem with these shows that are kind of on the bubble, where if it's a smash hit, it goes on forever, right? So, a show like a Seinfeld or a MASH or a Cheers or a Friends or whatever, they're given enough runway where when they are ready, they can go out on their own terms. Whether it ends well or not is a different story. You look at like How I Met Your Mother, where that one, it caught lightning in a bottle and it did very well. Last season was a little, maybe not my favorite, but they were able to wrap up the storyline. And then you look at its kind of spinoff series, How I Met Your Father, and it got like a season and a half, 2 seasons, and it was done. And it wasn't a great show. I kind of got roped into it just because it was a spinoff of the show I loved, and I was willing to kind of hang in with it, but it wasn't very good, and we're never gonna know how she met her father. So or how, right,
That's where people get kind of they'll leave, they'll bail if they think that this is not going to wrap up in a way that we'll find out who whatever is. And then they talk about, well, let's bring something back. Well, I don't know that it works, because the audience has already said goodbye and they don't need a second shot at it.
Yeah, and there are some series too where I feel like they just kind of go on too long. Like This Is Us ended at the right point for me. My wife and I watched it from the beginning. We really liked it as a show. That last season was kind of like, all right, I'm glad we're kind of wrapping it up now, because it feels like we are running into that potential of going a season too long. And then I think back to Modern Family. There is a show, I loved it from the beginning. The first couple seasons, I absolutely adored that show. I did not watch the final season of Modern Family. Like I tapped out the penultimate season. I was just like, you know what? I don't need to see any more. Maybe I'll go back and watch it on streaming one day. But it got to the point where I'm done. I've invested all my time into these characters. However it wraps up doesn't even matter to me at this point. I've given up on The Simpsons too. I mean, there's a show which been on for like a century, it feels like. And
I don't want to give up on The Simpsons, but I forget to watch it. And I keep thinking, well, there's a Simpsons channel. I could watch it anytime on a Simpsons channel. I like the idea of The Simpsons. I just maybe don't make it appointment viewing anymore.
The Simpsons, and not, I mean, there's a show, it's groundbreaking. It's been on forever. but it's very formulaic, right? You always have your, once a year, it's like How Homer Met Marge. You've got a Treehouse of Horrors. You have a Christmas episode. You have a fairy tale episode. You have some other weird, it's almost like, 10 of the episodes kind of write themselves and they just rehash it every year in some other way. And then they, use 10 others to tell a different story.
With a new reference to something that's in the news. They'll always have some way of trying to kind of nudge whatever people are talking about.
And for whatever I think is like for Star Wars fans, there's a lot of criticism at Disney for some of what they've done. I will say they've done a pretty good job at least giving shows some runway and then at least setting them up for a starting point and end point. Like The Bad Batch, which was another one which just wrapped up recently and the show is done now. We knew going into it would be like a 2 or 3 season series. It wasn't something that was going to linger forever. We knew that Andor was going to be 2 seasons and 1 is done and we've got, another season still to come. And we know with like The Mandalorian that it's leading into a movie now. So at least for all, for the good or the bad or whatever you want to call it for Disney, they've at least with those series kind of given you like some expectations of what to know, that this isn't going to be, 10 to 14 seasons and however the ratings play out will determine things. They're kind of establishing some expectations and the shows are coming and then they're going.
They muddy the waters in this streaming versus theater debate.
Right.
Because if they're saying you need to go to a theater to see this, and then you can see this at home and you can do that, it doesn't really set up a movie theater as a place that you must go. And I think they are responsible. They should own it because they're creating this world that doesn't need to be. Remember when they would do movies based on TV shows? Star Trek was good at that. And Star Trek didn't do well when it was on TV. And then they started doing movies and it became this thing. And you would think, well, it belongs in the movies. It's that big. This last week, we had Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes. And that started out as a 1. And then there was a sequel. And then it moved into a TV series. And then they brought it back. And now they're rebooting it again. And so there's a lot of life that could come from these kinds of things. It's just all a matter of how you present it. We had one last visit to the set of Young Sheldon. If you look somewhere, I've got a photo gallery of all these kind of things where you can look very closely. It's like the ultimate in going into somebody's house and you start snooping. And you always want to make sure you go to the bathroom so you can see what's in the bathroom. But we got to walk around the set. And in the process of this, I grabbed Montana Jordan. He plays Georgie, the son who has a girlfriend, and they had a baby and they're getting married and all this kind of stuff. And they're the fulcrum of the new series. What is it called? Georgie and Mandy's First Marriage or something like that. I'm sure they'll change it before the fall. He started out as a kid on this and really did not have a lot of credits to his name. This is like they thought he was really cool, and he speaks with this very thick Southern accent. If you can cut through it, you can understand what he's saying. There was a hint that they would have a spinoff. Right. When he talks with me that, great, it'd be great. He talks about what this meant to him. And it is interesting to hear somebody like that who is actually looking forward to life after the series. So if you will, let's roll this. It's me with Montana Jordan, who plays Georgie on Young Sheldon. How fun has this been? Has it been
It's been great. I mean, I couldn't ask for a better people to work with. And ever since the beginning, we've always been a family. And I mean, it's safe to say that it was love at first sight for everybody.
Do you think about what my next thing is going to be?
I don't stress about anything. I put all my trust in the Lord, believe in the Lord, and I put all my trust in Him. He'll do me right.
Well, was acting always in the back of your mind that someday you would do it or not?
I did my first thing when I was 12, and I had never thought about doing anything like it. And then I did a movie with Josh Brolin and Danny McBride when I was 12 years old. And then after that, I just got a manager from that and just picked up from there. So
Come on, that's not the way it's supposed to be.
I know, man. That's what I'm saying. I'm thankful and I'm blessed for everything that has been given to me.
How do you retain the accent? Because I'm sure living out here.
Well, I tell you the secret. I'm out here to film, and that's the only reason I'm out here is to film. I go straight back to Texas.
And then you can get it all back.
Yes, sir. It
Very
comes
good.
back real fast.
Would you like to continue with this character? Would you like to be part of a sequel if they did that?
Yeah, I think Georgie and Mandy, that whole storyline has a lot more that could be told from it.
Sure.
And I think everybody knows that. And I don't know, we'll just have to see where it goes. But
Yeah, the whole unwed parent kind of thing is a story that needs to be told, and it really isn't on television.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people, if it did end up happening on something of that storyline, I think a lot of people enjoy it and a lot of people will relate to it.
What will you miss about this show?
Oh, I miss everything. I miss the people I work with. I miss not even, when I say the people I work with, I'm not even saying just the actors. I'm saying even people behind the scenes. Everybody's so down to earth. Everybody's so great to work with. You come to work, you're not dreading to come to work every day. You're excited when you wake up to come to work to a place like this.
Have you thought, what am I going to steal from the set?
Oh, I'm thinking. I'm still thinking.
You don't have the list yet?
I don't have a list yet, but I'm thinking on it.
All right, Bruce, thanks for that interview. So that's the end of an era for that program, but launching into another. So one thing ends and another thing begins.
It's a lot like an episode of Streamed and Screened.
That's right. So on that note, right, we will wrap up now and look forward to next week. We're going to talk what's happening up in the sky, right? Is that what you're thinking?
Yeah. So, and it's not Top Gun Part 3 or 4.
No.
It's something else. So be ready for that, and it'll be interesting to see what you think of the real people that are involved.
Okay. All right. Well, on that note, thanks again for listening, and return next week for another episode of Streamed and Screened.
There was a time when sunlight turned the earth into a gallery, when elegant estates welcomed works of art that drew us closer and closer together. It was a captivating time. It was spring, this spring at Biltmore. Plan your visit or overnight stay so you can enjoy the marvelous works of Chihuly while every corner of Biltmore blooms. Reserve now to get spring savings at Biltmore.com.